awesome opportunity to come into your presence. We pray now that your presence, your power, your anointing will be in the midst of us today. We thank you for a brand new year. We pray blessings upon our nation. We declare that no weapon formed against this nation shall prosper. We speak the blessings of Almighty God, the wisdom of Almighty God as the senators legislate. We pray that you, O God, would direct all thoughts and all ideas that are inconsistent with your will and your way. In the name that is above every name, and we all say, amen. You've taught us to say, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. God bless you all.
Yes, Madam President, I move that the minutes of Wednesday, January the 30th, 2019 be adopted.
Madam Vice President, I rise to second.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that the minutes of the Senate for January 30th, 2019 be adopted as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The minutes are adopted as presented. Motions for leave of absence, leave to resign, swearing in of new senators, communications by the President, messages from the Governor General, messages from the House of Assembly, laying of documents by ministers, communications by ministers, communications by senators, questions, answers to questions, presentations of petitions, appointment of select committees, report of committees, first reading of bills, second reading and committal, committee of the whole, third reading and passing of bills, consideration of House amendments, resolutions.
Yeah. Madam President, I wish to move for adoption and approval of the Senate the following resolution. Whereas the Treasurer of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, the Treasurer, a corporation sole established under Section 4.1 of the Ministry of Finance Act, Chapter 23, Statute Law of the Bahamas, the Act, is seized in fee simple and trust for Her Majesty and the right of her government of the said Commonwealth for public purposes of the hereditaments described in the schedule hereto. And whereas the Treasurer has agreed to sell, and the minister responsible for housing, a corporation sole established under Section 3 of the Housing Act, Chapter 199, Statute Laws of the Bahamas, the purchaser has agreed to buy the hereditaments containing by amendments 1 and 267 hundredths, 1.267 acres, for an estate in fee simple in possession for the nominal sum of $10 in the currency of the Commonwealth in the currency of the Commonwealth, the said currency. And whereas by Section 5.3a of the Act, the Treasurer shall not sell or make any other disposition of the fee simple of any land vested in her without the prior approval of both houses of Parliament, signified by resolution thereof. Now therefore be it resolved that pursuant to Section 5.3a of the Act, this House approves the conveyance by the Treasurer to the purchaser of the hereditaments for the nominal sum of $10 in the said currency. Madam President, this resolution before us today seeks for our approval for the conveyance of 1.2 acres of land in the Fox Hill community. It seeks approval for the treasurer to sell this 1.2 acres of land to the minister responsible for housing. The land will be developed for the sale of service lots and is part of our government's commitment to develop new subdivisions to address the demand for affordable housing and home ownership. The focus of the government is on installing the necessary infrastructure on the land to be developed and sold at a cost to first-time homeowners in New Providence and in the Family Islands. The availability of these service lots will allow more Bahamians access to affordable homes. Preliminary work on this project in Fox Hill began in 2014. Those works included the initial clearing of the property for surveying of the proposed site and design of the subdivision. The subdivision will comprise of 10 service lots and will be sold not exclusively but primarily to young Bahamians and will be called the Lionel Davis subdivision. The late Lionel Davis served as a member of Parliament for Fox Hill constituency from 1968 to 1977. The Davis family is well known in the Fox Hill community. And in addition to Mr. Lionel Davis' contribution in the political arena, his brothers were also major players in the Eastern District of New Providence in the early days leading up to majority rule. He was one of the founding members of the modern-day Fox Hill Festival. Under the Access to Affordable Homes Act 2018, owners of service lots in a government-approved subdivision may apply to the Minister of Finance for an exemption from customs and excise tax on all materials necessary to construct a single-family dwelling home. The Ministry of Environment and Housing began its service lots program in July of 2018 with the opening of Sunset Close subdivision off Carmichael Road. This initiative, Madam President, gives Bahamians who ordinarily could not afford a home of their own access to affordable housing. Service lots owners are able to construct their own homes using their own contractors and architects. Or if they do not have an architect, they can use a pre-existing housing plan offered by the government. Lots in Sunset Close were sold for under $20,000, and lots in Lionel Davis subdivision is expected to be sold for a similar price. The other subdivisions currently being developed are in Abaco, Andrews, San Salvador, South Eleuthera, and the Carmichael Village subdivision here in New Providence. Madam President, one of the most important investments or assets of any person or any family is the ownership of a lot and subsequently a home. All of us present strive for it. Some of us have accomplished it, and some of us are still thriving. This government wants to make it possible for every Bahamian to own their own homes. And there's many reasons for that. It leads to a very stable society in terms of our social environment. It also gives ownership of a piece of the rock in their country. You have the inheritance law, which you can pass the home or the property on to children and consequently on to grandchildren. And it also helps with business development. A lot of us who might want to go into business, when we approach a financial institution, the first thing what they want to know is what collateral do you have to put up to borrow the monies needed. And this is very, very important for the development for business, for potential business owners, especially young Bahamians who want to endeavor into entrepreneurship. So, Madam President, I am very pleased. Having spent at least up to age 10 living in the Foxhill community on Johnson Road, I'm very pleased to see that this will add to the further development of this historic community in Foxhill. And I'm very pleased today to move this resolution. If I may obtain a second.
The chair recognizes Senator Johnny Ann Dorset.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I'm very pleased to stand this morning to second this resolution to vest this land for the purpose of providing lots to Bahamians to build homes. And Madam President, I am happy to hear that this will be named the Lionel Davis subdivision, as I think it is a fitting tribute to Mr. Lionel Davis, who I had the privilege to know growing up in Foxhill. As Senator Folks just said, he was a member of Parliament for Foxhill for 2 terms. And I can still remember when he was elected. And I remember how proud the Foxhillian were of Mr. Davis. Prior to that, there was a different kind of system where I think you had 2 representatives for an area, and Foxhill was considered part of the East. And I remember other people being representatives. They had a senior and a junior. And I remember one time, I think it was Carlton Francis who might have been the junior, and Jeffrey Johnstone, the senior, and that kind of thing. But when the system changed and they had 1 representative for a constituency, Lionel Davis became the representative for Foxhill. And we were all very proud of him. I remember my father, who was a very staunch PLP, and I often wondered how he would have reacted to my political development. But the question never arose, fortunately. But I remember he and other men of the community. You see, Lionel Davis was an integral part of the Foxhill community. He was one of the boys in Foxhill. And he moved among the people like everybody else. He was just a normal ordinary Foxillian who just happened to be an educator who assisted many people in the area. Particularly, he assisted many of the young people by tutoring them and helping them to prepare for exams and that sort of thing. He was also a businessman in the area. He was a member of the St. Anne's Church. And I remember how my father and a lot of the other men gathered around him after that election. And on the day that Parliament convened and, they were all to go down, I remember my mother and a lot of the women going to his house to assist his wife, Miss Marley, because, our Foxhill lady had to look just right. So a lot of the women, perhaps to her annoyance, I don't know, just descended on her house to help her get dressed and get ready. So it was a part of not just their experience, but the entire Foxhill experience. As I thought about this, Lionel Davis was a member of the St. Anne's Church, which is on, if you come into Foxhill from Bay Street, St. Anne's is on the first hill. I'm a member of Mount Carey, which is on the second hill, and often when we give directions, we describe it in that manner. What I found interesting is that the member of Parliament that followed Mr. Davis was Frank Edgecombe. He was a member of Mount Carey. He was followed by George Mackey, who was a member of St. Anne's. And then I came along, a member of Mount Carey. So the representation altered between those two hills on Foxhill Road until there was some gentleman who we considered an outsider who came in and upset that rhythm. But, he had a reputation for being mischievous, so I understand that. I'm not sure we quite forgave him. But I just found it interesting that, St. Anne's, Mount Carey combination. But not George Mackey, he was another wonderful man in Foxhill. But Lionel...
He was from St. Anne's,
yeah.
So he went right back there.
Yes.
Yeah.
But Lionel Davis, as I said, he was a true Foxhillian, and he was very concerned with the development of his community. And he worked very hard to help develop that in a positive manner. We all, anybody who knows Foxhill knows about Freedom Park, which has become one of the central points in the community, and where they do a lot of sporting activities, gathering for all kinds of reasons. Lionel Davis was one of the people who was instrumental in the development of Freedom Park. He, along with Carlton Francis, and I think he was parliamentary secretary to Carlton Francis, and they were instrumental in developing that park, among many other things. But that stands out because that has become a central point in the Foxhill community. So, Madam President, I think it is a fitting honor for Lionel Davis, and I'm very happy that he has been recognized in this way. Madam President, one of the biggest social challenges of any government is to provide affordable housing in a sufficient quantity to meet the needs of its people, and we are no exception. Successive governments have followed the same model in providing housing to meet this need. And, we have seen from, I think it started with Yellow Elder, all the various subdivisions where houses were built and people got mortgages and moved into those houses. But this government has chosen to follow a different model, to do it in a different way. And instead of building houses, in fact, if you look back at that, that has been we've had success stories and we've had stories that were not so successful. And I remember being invited to one or two of those houses by the residents who were showing me all around and, look at the wall, look at the roof, to show me the problems that developed with those houses. One of them was cracked up so badly that it just wasn't fit for habitation. So we know that while this has been overall successful, there have been some problems in this area. By providing low-cost lots to Bahamians so that they could build their own homes, I think gives another option, and I think it's a very attractive option, so that you don't end up with, a big development or even a not so big development where every home looks alike. You have these little cookie-cutter houses being built. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but this gives you an opportunity to show your own style, your own individuality, to design your home in the way that suits you. So Lionel Davis Estates would be the Lionel Davis subdivision is a continuation of this government's initiative to provide lots for people to build their own homes. And the prices are very attractive, under $20,000. I don't know where you can get a lot for under $20,000 anymore. But this is the government's way of helping the people, because home ownership, as Senator Folks indicated, is a goal of just about every Bahamian. I understand that the lots are they're pretty big lots. They're 90-something by 100 and something, which are pretty big lots, especially at that price. Because I have seen, looking through the papers, you see lots advertised much smaller than that as duplex lots, and for much larger prices. So I think overall it's a very good deal, and it provides a good opportunity for many Bahamians who otherwise would not be able to afford land. I understand that all the infrastructure is in place, so once you obtain your piece of land, you can just go ahead and build. When this came up, Madam President, I spoke to the Member of Parliament for Foxhill, Ms. Ferguson, because I didn't have an opportunity to go and look at the development, but I know that she had, and I was asking her, how it was progressing and how it was looking. She is also very pleased with this, needless to say. Yeah. But she was lamenting the fact that when the lots were cleared, that a lot of the trees, the native trees, were cut down. And even though she had intervened at some point and asked them not to take down any more of these trees, when she went back, even more of them had been cut down. And Madam President, I think this speaks to the need we have to really educate our people across the board about the importance of protecting our environment, protecting our whole, how can I put it, just protecting what is ours. These trees are native to the Bahamas, and some of these, particularly when you go into an area like Fox Hill, many people go up there expecting to find certain vegetation. So when you're talking about sapodilla trees, or dilly trees as we call them, and canap and juju and all mangoes, all these things, they expect to find a lot of that in Fox Hill. So I understand her concern that some of these trees have been destroyed. But I understand that at the end of the day, a couple was still left. And if you remember, Madam President, the Free National Movement had put in place legislation to protect certain trees, to make it illegal to cut these down without permission. I don't know the extent to which that is being followed, But perhaps, Madam President, we need to have another look at that legislation with a view to expanding it and strengthening it so that when people clear lots, they would be mindful of the environmental impact and also of the importance of preserving our native trees. Although I do understand that there have been some environmental protection included in this, in that there is some stipulation about the kind of appliances, you know, they should have environmentally sensitive appliances and that kind of thing. So all is not lost, but we need to pay more attention to that. Madam President, you know, Bahamians do not like to rent. Bahamians want to own their homes. And we have the thing with Foxhillians. They not only want to own their own homes, they want to own homes in Fox Hill. Many Foxhillians do not want to leave the area. And if you knew the Fox Hill that I grew up in, you would understand that, Madam President. It's a historic area. It's quaint, it's family-oriented. There's a sense of community in Fox Hill that has always been there. Now, Fox Hill, like everywhere else, has changed over the years. And it's unfortunately beginning to develop a reputation for crime and violence. We've seen some of it, which is very unfortunate. But that is not what Fox Hill is about. Fox Hill is a community. It's family-oriented. And these influences that come in to that community and disrupt it, that's something that we have to change. And one of the ways we can change that is to develop families, a more family-oriented atmosphere. This resolution that we bring today will help to do this, Madam President. It will give Bahamians an opportunity to come in and build homes and build families and create more of that, to knit that fabric a little tighter in the community of Fox Hill. The people of Fox Hill want to work with government to bring about changes that are positive and to return that community to the quiet, idyllic, historic area. I won't say village because we've grown way beyond a village, but to the kind of area that it used to be. Madam President, by giving Bahamians, now I know that this area is not developed for Foxhillians to buy land. But I'm hoping that a lot of Foxhillians who are looking to build their homes would take advantage of this so that they can grow their families in Fox Hill. And by doing this, Madam President, this would help to reestablish the kind of bond that we had in that community back when I was a child there. And it would help to get rid of some of the negative influences in the community. As you build families and you have neighbors that look out for each other as it used to be in the past, it would help to negate some of the criminal activity and some of the violence that stems from that in Fox Hill and other communities throughout the Bahamas. What we would all like to see it return to is the quiet, hardworking community with law-abiding, proud citizens. If you go look in Fox Hill, I think we have more churches than any other community. 33, Mr. Mitchell said. We have a lot of churches in that community. And if you go on a Sunday, all those churches have people in them. So it's also a church-going community, very religious people by and large. That is what undergirds the Fox Hill community. And Madam President, it is my hope that once this resolution is passed and those lots are available, that Fox Hillians and others buy them, build their home, grow their families, and help to return Fox Hill to the kind of community that it used to be, which is safe to live in, which is a happy place to grow children. And I know that there are plans in place to bring about improvements in the area, and this would go hand in hand with those improvements that are planned to help build and develop that community and help it return to what it used to be back in the good old days that I remember. And with that, Madam President, I second this resolution.
You broke the thing again.
The chair recognizes Senator
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Got it. Thank you.
I'll go get it.
Madam Vice President, as always, I'm grateful to God for the opportunity to present in this place. Madam Vice President, before I get into the resolution, if you just bid me for a moment, I want to inquire. I've been asked by a group of Bahamians in Grand Bahama to query with Senator Thompson and Senator Darius on the status of their benefits owed to them. There are about 60 persons who were laid off from urban renewal almost 2 years ago now. All of them received letters advising their entitlement to their benefits, and to this day, they have yet to receive anything. Madam Vice President, times are tough for many Bahamians, and I understand in Grand Bahama the economy is still on the downturn, making it even more difficult for some persons to make ends meet. So I'd like some answers for this group of Bahamians waiting to receive their benefits. When will they receive what is due to them?
That's what we want.
They asked me to ask on behalf of them to be their voice in this place and find out when will they receive the benefits that are due to them. It's been 2 years now. Don't need to be another 2 years. I think it should be easy for someone to come to the table, put it together, and provide them with their benefits.
Yeah, Madam President, I don't want to. Yeah, Madam President, I don't want to get into the facts involving this matter. I know for sure a trade dispute has been filed, and there have been several hearings at our office in Freeport. And I'm also advised that a legal action, I think, well, I don't want to call the lawyer's name, has been initiated on behalf, I think it's some 60 plus workers, I believe, which will make it sub judice and beyond our comment. So I really do not want to get into the facts of it, but that is where it stands now.
Good answer, Matt.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I just don't think we should have to arrive to the point where it's in the courts. It would have been good to just give the people what they're due. And you still have that opportunity to do that. But I yield and I move forward to my next point. I want to contribute to the resolution today, Madam Vice President. I do not intend to be before you long. I agree with the senators that spoke earlier that it is indeed a fitting and great tribute to the former MP for the Fox Hill community, Lionel Davis, the late grandfather of my husband. And I understand that this name and recommendation for the subdivision was actually made by the former MP Senator Fred Mitchell. And so I'm happy that the F&M did not stop, cancel, and review this. And they continued on with naming this subdivision as deserving in the honor of my husband's grandfather, the late Mr. Lionel Davis. But Madam Vice President, I have a few concerns. Every time we come into this place, I come with a hope and anticipation that the Bahamian people will get something beneficial and worthwhile from this government. Something that they can actually thank this government for. However, yet again, we are making a big ordeal over little to nothing. In this country, we have presently hundreds, if not thousands, of persons waiting on the opportunity to be homeowners. And the only solution this F&M government can come up with is service lots. Not just service lots, Madam Vice President, but lots on 1.2 acres of land. So essentially, we are talking about some 10 lots. Now, let's consider this, Madam Vice President. It is my understanding that the housing waiting list is in excess of 7,000 persons. But almost 2 years later, all this F&M government could show is that they offered 30 service lots. What is also unique about this inept government is that they are in this place and the other place bragging about teaching a man to fish by only providing service lots instead of building homes. Whilst they're programmed to sell the lots to Bahamians, leave the Bahamian to the market to find a suitable contractor. Now, is that really benefiting those persons that truly want to be homeowners, knowing the headache and cost overruns that usually occur during construction? See, the PLP realized it is best to offer turnkey homes because of the significant risk associated with self-building. Despite the duty-free concessions, there is still a number of issues that result during construction that many persons may not be financially able to manage. Madam Vice President, the F&M government housing program is woefully inadequate, under-resourced, if not non-existent. It is shameful that just last year the housing minister advised of how the majority of Bahamians who applied for their service lot program could not qualify. Well, what did he expect when there has been absolutely no growth in the economy since May 2017 and an increase in taxes on the backs of the Bahamian people?
Tell us what the IMF
Tell us what you did.
Tell us what the IMF has to say.
Madam Vice President, I do understand my colleague's passion, and I know she speaks with passion, but we also want them to speak with facts. And it's incorrect to say that there's been no growth in the economy.
Madam Vice, I did indicate that I understand my colleague's passion, and I know she believes in what she's saying. However, when you speak with passion, you must also support it with facts. And so to say that there has been no growth to the economy is incorrect. There's been a number of the international agencies who have indicated that there has been growth in the economy. And I do want to just make this quick point, if I may. Just because you have growth in the economy does not mean that things are better for everyone. So let's be clear. You do not need to negate the fact that there has been growth.
Yeah, okay.
You do not need to negate the fact that things are getting better. But that does not necessarily mean it's getting better for everyone. We accept that. And that's why we continue to work, we continue to produce, and we continue to do what we need to do for the people in Grand Bahama and for the people of the Bahamas. But what she said is incorrect. And I think she should correct the fact and withdraw what she said. No, she can make what she wants to say, but she really needs to correct that fact.
But not everyone is doing well.
Madam Vice President, I want to make sure I make my comment clear enough so all can understand, right? You have reports by the IMF, which Minister Thompson is praising and bragging about some form of growth that may have happened under their management. But the realities, and the realities on the ground in the Bahamas is not so. People are suffering and they are struggling, okay? And so I am speaking to the realities that has been happening. So I'm speaking to the realities. Okay, I speak to the fact that the realities show that there's more struggle since May 2017. And I withdraw that about growth if they're referring to IMF.
Yeah, that's all.
But I am talking about realities, okay? I'm talking about realities. Madam President, I also find it amusing what the F&M is promoting. Their announcement is in fact that a PLP project designed and approved before 2017 general election, which is this subdivision, is so awesome for the people. Awesome for the people. No. I'm talking about the naming of the subdivision came under the PLP. Remind you now, you don't have much ideas. Your only idea for housing is service.
Senators.
That's not housing. That's not housing.
One at a time, please.
And I continually warn this government, Madam Vice President, that their program is flawed. I still do not believe that applicants who need affordable housing would have the resources to just take advantage of these service lots and then be able to go into the market, to the banks, and get any sort of mortgage plan to build on these lots. That is why the PLP offered turnkey, making it more affordable and making Bahamians actual home owners. Yes. Madam Vice President, and I just do not want to be hard on them because I know I'm mashing some corns up in here, right? Because we have a serious housing situation. And the fact that they are trying is evident that they recognize there is a problem. Yes. However, the solution they are producing is also clear that they do not realize the extent of the housing problem in this country. The F&M government must go back to the drawing board. They can simply go to the files and follow the blueprints of the great PLP. Yes. Because that is the only way the Bahamian people will get real relief.
All the way, baby.
Madam President, this F&M government is running out of time to make good on their promises and their plans, if any, to the Bahamian people. I mean, after 2 years of this government being in, almost 2 years, don't worry, I waiting for you at the budget. 2 years. They still have absolutely nothing to show by way of housing development or any sort of development for that matter for the Bahamian people.
Yeah, wants to talk again.
And the announcement wouldn't have been to me so insulting if maybe they were offering 10 to 15 acres of land for private sale. But no, they are bragging about offering 1.2 acres, which is just 10 lots. And one intriguing question, Madam Vice President, and I would love to hear this answer. How will these 10 lots be sold to the hundreds or thousands of persons waiting to be homeowners in the Bahamas? How will it be sold to them? And how will they get the financing to construct the homes? How? The people who really need the assistance and who really want to be homeowners, how? This is an insult to the Bahamian people, many of whom are still waiting to obtain a government-subsidized home. And if any further proof is needed that the F&M government is taking our country backwards, one should look no further than this flawed service lots program, which has rolled back on some 55 years of government-subsidized housing for ordinary Bahamians. Madam Vice President, housing remains to be one of the greatest challenges facing the Bahamian people, middle and lower class. This F&M government can sugarcoat this flawed program all they want. However, it is becoming evident to the Bahamian people that the F&M is completely clueless as to the challenges and the solution. Although I support this resolution, Madam Vice President, in principle, I find the program to be very vague and difficult to fully understand this F&M's government full plan. I end.
Yes, very good, man. Excellent. You should keep it.
Madam Chair, and Madam Vice President, allow me just to, I don't think I'll need the podium. Just
Speak softly and carry a big stick.
I always speak softly. But Madam Vice President, it is again a privilege to stand in this place, and I do give God thanks for the opportunity to speak. I hadn't intended on speaking, but let's just say I was motivated, motivated to speak. But I really do not want the public to underestimate the importance of what we are doing here today. And it is really not a matter of boasting. It is not a matter of making a big deal about, as my colleague says, 10 lots. But it is doing what is necessary to get the job done. The reality is, if we as a government, this is what the government was elected to do. It was elected to take these kinds of resolutions to Parliament, to the House of Assembly, to the Senate, in order to actually execute the job. There is a program that's in place, and this is necessary. So I don't want it to appear as though we are congratulating ourselves. This is what governance is. You take matters, you bring them to the House of Assembly, you bring them to the Senate, you get the approval, and then you get the job done. You do not leave plans in the archive. You do not leave your blueprints, as my colleague says, and she said the blueprints, that this really was a PLP blueprint. But you do not, what you do is you do not leave the blueprint in the archive. But you actually get the job done so that the people can actually get into the houses. That's what you do. That's what this job is about. And it is genuinely unfortunate that the argument that my colleague is putting forward, it is unfortunate that the argument that they're putting forward is this was a PLP plan and you are executing a PLP plan. And the unfortunate part about it is we hear this argument so often. When things are actually done, then we are accused of executing a PLP plan. Eventually, the people will get, will understand that they were right in electing someone who actually gets the job done. They eventually, what will be blatantly clear, as people say, pellucidly clear, is that, well, lawyers, correct. we are people too. But what will be clear is, if this argument continues that, oh, this was a plan and you were executing our plan, this is a plan. Well, if it's a good plan, then yes, we should execute it. If it's a good plan, then that's what we should do. We should. But what it does is it shows the difference. It shows the difference. There's one who will articulate a plan wonderfully, and unfortunately will leave, and these are not my words, they will leave the blueprint in the archive, because those are not my words. Blueprint and archive are not my words. Those were their words. But unfortunately, that's what they do, and this is what we do. And one other point that I want to raise also was the point that colleague made about the affordability of these houses. And there was some point about it being made affordable and so on. Well, one of the points of what makes this program distinguishable and what makes this program, I think, a wonderful program is it allows persons the flexibility to be able to do things either out of pocket, or if they are unable to do it out of pocket, it allows them to go to the banks, to go to the financial institutions, to go to the mortgage corporation, and to access funding and financing to do it. So it allows you the flexibility to do it. There are many, including myself, there are many who start off building out of pocket and take it to a certain level and then go to a financial institution to complete it. So it allows persons the flexibility to do it. But the last point, what this does, and again, which was glossed over and not taken into account, is it allows persons to take advantage of duty-free exemptions for their construction materials. I mean, this is a huge difference between just going to the bank and asking the bank for money and paying the bank back, when what you are paying the bank for includes the duty for the materials. So in essence, it means you are able to build a house and construct a house at a lower cost than you would have before. It includes duty-free exemptions, and it also includes excise tax exemptions as well. So I do not want these points to be lost in the noise. And a lot of it is noise, but we don't want these important points to be lost in the noise. The first, you will have the flexibility to do it. The flexibility that if you are able to, and not all will be, but if you are able to start building out of pocket. If you are not, then you are able to apply for funding. So it gives you the flexibility of doing that. And it also gives you the ability to actually construct a house cheaper than you would have before. Because if you are approved for this plan, then you will automatically get the duty-free exemptions for it. That's the realities. And so I understand the passion that colleagues on the other side make, and they have to say something. I mean, I guess they're not going to stand up and say, good job. They're not going to stand up and say, you executed it. They're not going to stand up and say, boy, I wish I did what you are doing today. So I understand their position. But this is a good thing, and we shouldn't lose sight of that. This is a good thing for the people. It is a good thing for the people of Fox Hill. And I want to say a special hello to my grandmother, who's been in Fox Hill for most of her life, Gloria Goodman, who lives right on the hill in Fox Hill Road next to St. Anne's, and who's been there for many, many, many years. And I remember many, many summers being in the Fox Hill community. And so this is a wonderful thing for the Fox Hill community. It is a wonderful thing for the young people, young professionals who are living in the Fox Hill community and who want to remain in the Fox Hill community and who want to continue to build the community of Fox Hill. It is a wonderful thing for them. So we shouldn't lose sight of the realities of what we're doing here today. It is a good job. I commend the Minister of Housing for what he's actually executing, and I commend the Prime Minister for the overall plan and overall housing program that this government is putting in place. Thank you very much, Madam Vice President.
Madam President, I want to start off by saying that I want to take this time to wish the Bahamian people, my fellow honorable senators here in this upper chamber, and also the MPs representing the lower chamber, a very, very happy new year. Also, I would like to thank our Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Dr. Hubert Minnis, for his reposed confidence in me to be here as an honorable senator to represent my people in this honorable Senate. I'm truly honored. I take this opportunity very seriously to serve my Bahamian people, and it's truly a humbling experience. I want to wish everyone in our Bahama land a very safe and prosperous new year. The opposition, Madam President, the opposition reminded us that this is a PLP's blueprint. So, you know, Proverbs chapter 25, verse 14 said,
All right now.
a person who promises a gift but doesn't give it is like clouds and wind that brings no rain. Let me repeat that again. Let me repeat that again. I saw where two try to cover their heads. A person who promises a gift but doesn't give it is like clouds and wind that bring no rain. Proverbs 25, verse 14, my friend. Last year, this document was tabled in the lower house to be debated on. I recall listening very clearly where members opposite heckled in their usual manner that this will never come to light. Madam President, unlike those opposite, whose record is clear as crystal when it comes to not fulfilling their political promises, the FNM, on the other hand, has a radiant and distinct record in fulfilling its political promises to the Bahamian people, and today is another shining star being added to the proud legacy of being a government in the sunshine. Madam President, the government of the Bahamas is seeking approval for the conveyance of 1.2 acres of land in the Fox Hill community to be developed for the sale of service lots, and is a part of the government's commitment to develop new subdivisions to address the demand for affordable housing and home ownership. If we look around the country, particularly in Nassau, lots are selling for $80,000 a pop, or even more. And the reality is the majority of hard-working Bahamians cannot afford that. The FNM government is steadfast in ensuring that the Bahamian people who are interested in owning a piece of the rock to build their homes, to either start a family or move their family in, can be able to afford it at a low cost value. Unlike the former government and those opposite who made promises like the mortgage relief program, according to them, was supposed to help thousands of Bahamians, it never scratched the surface of its objectives. Instead, they helped a chosen few and intentionally forgot the people. But now the same people are hell-bent to be critical on this FNM's government doing something they couldn't do, and that is delivering its promises to the Bahamian people. This is what caring government does. This is what they do. We help those who want to help themselves. Madam President, I've been saying it for months, that the old ways in doing things have to cease. The minister responsible for housing, the Honorable Romel Ferreira, highlighted how the old way of doing business under the PLP cannot continue. He said that under the Christie and Davis leadership, low-cost homes were being overpriced. There was a few subdivisions that had houses overpriced between $13,000 to $18,000. In my view, Bahamians were shafted by that so-called Bahamian First government, and instead they were focused on that gold rush agenda. Madam President, those lots that the government is offering comes with profit infrastructure, cesspit, electricity, phone, and water, all of which will be available upon purchasing. Bahamians who buy their piece of the rock will be responsible to find their own architect, contractor, and build their own dream homes. And in addition, if they wish to use pre-existing plans by the Department of Housing, they can. The first phase of this promise came in existence in July 2018 when the government opened the Sunset Close Park subdivision. We did this because we have Bahamians who cannot afford the market price cost to still have an opportunity to be able to purchase lots, own a piece of the rock, and build their dream home. In Matthew 25, verse 40, the Bible teaches us and reminds us, truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. You know, I ain't no pastor, but Senator Darius, I'd like to get an amen for it.
Amen.
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 And with that being said, in this 2019, we are going to do more for Bahamian people, not just in Nassau, but also in the Family Islands. You like it? Madam President, in Fox Hill, the subdivision will comprise of 10 service lots that will be sold to young Bahamians and will be called the Lionel Davis subdivision. This new service lots are part of the government's new Access to Affordable Homes program. For those who don't know, the late Lionel Davis served as the Member of Parliament for the Fox Hill constituency from 1968 to 1977. He was one of the founding members of the modern-day Fox Hill Festival. Under this Access to Affordable Homes Act 2018, owners of service lots in the government-approved subdivision may apply to the Minister of Finance for exemption from custom duties and excess tax on materials necessary to construct a single-family dwelling home. According to the minister responsible for housing, he said that, and I quote, the service lots in Sunset Close were sold for under $20,000 to police officers, defense force officers, customs officers, teachers, and the list goes on. And the list goes on. A number of mortgages have also been approved for the construction of homes, end quote. To my understanding, the lots in Lionel Davis subdivision are expected to be sold for a similar price. Madam President, in addition to my questioning at high level personnel at the Department of Housing, they have already identified land for subdivision developed in Abaco, Andros, San Salvador, and Carmichael Village subdivision, which is located in New Providence. Madam President, I remember this personal incident very clearly because it stayed in my mind. I remember as a young chap going to Mortgage Corporation applying for government home back in 2003. I brought all my information, which was required. I remember getting the horrible news that I was not qualified. And they explained to me because of my loans here and there, plus my salary was too small. I was devastated. I told an elder in the community that at that time what happened, and he advised me to not feel bad because I have made an important but positive step in my life to own a piece of the rock in my young age. He asked me, how much more years do you have on your car loan? And I told him, I have 2 more years, sir. He said, okay, 2 years later, you should have a salary increase. And 2 years later, I went back to the Mortgage Corporation and reapplied for a government home. The lady at the time then told me that I will not be approved. I asked why. I already paid off my loans, I said. She said, it's because of your salary. Again, I felt devastated, but she told me to get someone who will be willing to sign on with you as to be a co-sponsor, so your file can look more attractive, and you can be approved to go to the next level for consideration. I did that, and thankfully was able to find someone to sign on with me, just so I can say I am one step closer to achieving my goal. Madam President, during that year, I waited and waited for my phone call to tell me, Mr. Jamal Moss, you're being approved. Instead, during the last 3 months, I wasted money on answering every strange number on my cell phone, thinking this was the housing people calling me. And you know, minutes wasn't cheap back in the day. In May 2005, while at work, I received a call from an unknown number. I went outside because I was in the receptionist area, and I answered it saying, hello, good afternoon. The person on the other side of the phone said, hello, is this Jamal Moss? I said, yes, this is he. May I ask who's speaking? They said, Jamal Moss, who campaigned with Carl Bell. I said, Jamal, this is me. I said, yes, this is Jamal. No, this is no made up. No, this is facts. I have a colleague who could verify me. The last time I checked, I have the floor. Hey, Madam President, like I was saying, they said Jamal Moss, who campaigned with Carl Bell, now Attorney General. I said, Madam President, I know they're trying to heckle me for me not to tell the story, but I will tell the story. Like I said, they said Jamal Moss, who campaigned with Carl Bell, who's now the Attorney General. I said, yeah. Well, Jamal, this is the minister. I was alerted about your application, and when I saw your name and where you work, I had to call you to be sure. Now, in my naive mind, he's calling me to tell me that I have been approved. You know what I mean, Senator Darius? Like I said earlier, in my naive mind, I'm thinking that the minister was calling me to tell me that I was approved. He said, man, and I couldn't. He said, man, it was an F&M. I can't do this for you. Plus, the board already alerted me and declared that they are not going to approve it. He told me to wait until your party get back in power. and that will be a very long time. He then said he has to go and hang up. Madam President. Madam President.
Senator, continue your story,
Thank you.
please.
I was left in shock. I felt like someone ripped me of my life savings. My zeal to work that day dropped big time. My coworkers saw me sitting so quietly inside the production room at Zedness, with clear sadness on my face, asking me, "What happened? Is everything okay?" I said, yeah. Actually, one of them was here earlier. I said, yeah, I'm okay. He was like, "Jamal, I know you always happy and excited. Now you seem unusual." I told him what happened an hour ago, and he couldn't believe it. He told me not to worry because what God has for you, it will come no matter what.
Amen.
2 years later, that same bunch was thrown out of office. I then went back to Mortgage Corporation to follow up my application and update it only to be told that the file did not exist.
Wow.
I was like, "What you mean it did not exist or it does not exist?" I brought all my documents here, I said. Thankfully, a ranking employee of the corporation kept a copy of my file because of me constantly updating it, was able to assist me. And in 2009, I was able to obtain a home. You know, a senator folks said earlier that owning a piece of the rock, building a home to move your family into, is one of the best goals that can be achieved, especially for young people. It brings high level of sense worth, achievement, and the list goes on to the average Bahamian. And he's absolutely right. That is how I felt when I finally got the call and said, "You are approved." See, the opposite could come with all the rhetoric, talking about building a home, building a home, building a home. And you're not teaching people how to fish. But no, that's what you said. That's what you said. No. Yeah, but hold on, let me finish. Let me make my point. But the reality is that the reality is this: Bahamians are not looking for a handout, as you guys are accustomed to. The way you guys operate is that in order for you to get this, you have to do that. But Bahamians, like I said, Bahamians are not looking for a handout. Bahamians just looking for a shot. I'm speaking to all your opposition. So at the end of the day, giving the Bahamian people an opportunity to own a lot that you may be critical of is a start in the right direction. It gives them a sense of goal and to stay focused as in what it is that they really want. Not everybody could afford the $90,000 lots. That's right. Not everybody could afford the lots and build a home.
That's right. That's right.
And what the government is doing is that we're selling the lots for less than $30,000 to help the Bahamian people to achieve this goal.
That's right.
It's about empowering Bahamians by every means necessary. And it's about strengthening the middle class. That's what this government is doing. This government is about believing in Bahamian people. And as I said earlier, Madam President, in Matthew, Senator Harris, you let me know. In Matthew, where the Bible says, "What you do for the least of my brothers and sisters." I just want the chapter. But what you do for the least of my brothers and sisters, you do for me. And that is what we are doing. We're doing for the least of our brothers and sisters here in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Amen. And I cry shame on those who wish to be critical. I cry shame on those who brag about it was a blueprint that they created because they never did anything. I cry shame on those who did not even execute it. But I applaud and I shout with gladness in my heart that this FNF government is doing for the least of my brothers and sisters. Madam President, on this day, I am glad to say that I support this resolution.
As many? The chair recognizes Senator Renard Henfield.
Consultative. You were here before, right? Consultative. Consultative. Good morning, Madam President. Good morning, colleagues. Thank you for permitting me to speak, Madam Vice President. My family taught me a long time ago that you are nothing if you are ungrateful to the people on whose shoulders you stand on, and if you are ungrateful to the God that orchestrated it all. Like you, Madam Vice President, and my colleagues, I have seen what God has done, what He can do, and what He continues to do for our people, and I thank Him. I also take this opportunity to thank the Most Honorable Dr. Hubert Minnis for the two appointments. Firstly, as a consultative senator. I know Senator Mitchell was once a consultative senator appointed by the FNM. By the FNM. You know, I know that's the first time Senator Mitchell became a senator. An FNM appointed by the FNM. And, you know, I give thanks for the appointment as one of 3 consultative senators, Madam Vice President. And I give thanks for the second appointment as chairman of the Advisory Committee for the Introduction of Local Government to New Providence. The term empowerment, Madam Vice President, refers to measures designed to increase the degree of autonomy and self-determination in people and in communities. And I make no apologies for this resolution today. I'm not going to downplay it in any way. I think it's a wonderful thing we're doing. I don't think anybody on the government side needs to apologize for what's being done today. Whether it's 10 families, 100 families, or 1,000 families, anything this government or any government does to put Bahamians in a home should be welcomed. It would be an understatement to say that I am optimistic about this administration's Affordable Homes Initiative, as it would be an understatement for me to say that I am just optimistic about the BTVI and University of the Bahamas tuition-free initiative, or the living allowance for Family Island students to attend university in New Providence. You know, I could never share it enough, Madam Vice President, when I come here, because I want to make sure every parent and every student in Inagua to Grand Bahama is aware of the opportunities as of this year that this government has made possible. You see, I'm a parent of 2 daughters, and I always brag about my 2 daughters. But I'm comforted in the fact of knowing that someday my 2 daughters will be able to go to the University of Bahamas tuition-free. You see, because when I was going through university, my parents sacrificed, saved, did without, just to put me through university. And my education was a burden on my parents, a sacrifice they had to make, having 2 other kids that I had to put through school and someday plan for university. So to know that thanks to this government, parents today and students today can send their students or attend the University of Bahamas or BTVI tuition-free is something we should commend the government for and constantly remind our people to reap the rewards of. You see, Madam Vice President, unlike the senators to my right, I marched on Black Friday 2016 and the Majority Rule Day 2017 for free tertiary education for our people. I marched for land for Bahamians. And I marched for the introduction of a strong local government to New Providence. You see, Madam Vice President, during we marched, the underlying theme then and the agenda then was and still is the empowerment of our people. I funded We March. So just to answer that for the record, and if you can say otherwise, prove it. A few months back, I stood in this honorable chamber and confessed that everyone has an agenda, Madam Vice President. Family Island residents have an agenda. They want better for their communities. Political parties have an agenda. Some want to get in power or return to power, even though some will never return to power. And environmental activists have an agenda. The LGBT community has an agenda. The church has an agenda. Everybody has an agenda. But my agenda was then and continues to be to this day, Madam Vice President, the empowerment of our people. And I believe that if you want to change the mindset and the circumstances of your people, you empower your people. You see, free tertiary education is empowering your people. And that's what this administration is doing. When in 2019, Bahamian students can attend BTVI or University of Bahamas tuition free, you know whose time it is? It's the people's time. That's right. When you want to empower your people, I believe you give them access to affordable land. So when Bahamians can purchase service lots for $20,000 to $30,000 in an approved subdivision with no fear of title disputes, you know whose time it is. It's the people's time. You know, Madam Vice President, I believe that to empower your people, you give them a seat at the table. So when a government can come in 2017 and within its first year mandate or constitute a whole advisory committee to introduce local government to New Providence, we should be commending the government. That's empowerment. So you know, Madam Vice President, I don't believe we are here today just to discuss the acre of land and the heritage district of Fox Hill. And I'm going to make, like I said before, I make no apology for what we're doing today. The truth is, we are expounding on the bigger agenda, which is empowerment of a people, which includes providing affordable land for our people. So as we control the narrative, I wish to remind our people to reap the rewards of their voting. You voted in a government to make it the people's time. It is now the people's time. Reap the rewards of the actions of a caring government. You see, this whole exercise is to advise our citizenry and the opposition that this government's agenda and actions are to empower Bahamians across the Bahamas, to put Bahamians first across the Bahamas, and make 2017 to 2017 the people's time across the Bahamas. Madam Vice President, it cannot be that good news for any number of our people is bad news for the opposition. Every politician, Madam Vice President, should embrace the good that's being done for our people, no matter how few. Nobody should downplay 10 families getting a home. Nobody should downplay that. Even if the politician wishes to start or end their contributions by saying, you know, we was gonna do this too for the people, you know. You see, Madam Vice President, governments, and I'm going to look at Senator Davis, governments shouldn't just build homes to put money in the pockets of contractors loyal to their parties. No government should do that. Especially where some of these contractors don't even have construction insurance for the structures they're constructing. You know, instead, Madam Vice President, visionary and transformative leaders let their people choose the design of their homes. They choose the contractors, and they let their people choose to peck, as we say, and eventually construct their homes themselves over a few years while saving tens of thousands of dollars. You know, it seems like I stepped on some corns. You see, Madam Vice President, visionary leaders don't just tell their people to go and get a government-secured educational loan and go off to college. Visionary leaders invest their taxpayers' dollars right at home in local institutions, without asking its students and young people to go into debt to empower themselves, or asking young people to go into debt as they return home to help build our country, complement our think tank, and improve our economy. And as a party that campaigned that it's the people's time, you make the land affordable, full stop. The term shouldn't end and the people have to hear you say, like some have to say, you know we was gonna. You know we was gonna. You know we had a knock eye, but we didn't. We were waiting for our second term. As a party that campaigned that it's the people's time, you make tertiary education accessible for your people. the term shouldn't end and the people of the hear you say, you know, we was gonna, we had the template. As a party of the campaign, it's the people's time. You make citizen participation in the decision-making process happen. The term shouldn't end and the people of the hear you say, as I've heard some say, you know, we was gonna, we had the blueprint or we had the template. So, Madam Vice President, the Minister of Housing tabled this resolution last week and kicked off the new year empowering our people and inspiring hundreds more to become homeowners. I commend him and the Minister's administration for that. And we must encourage our people to aspire for more than a Honda on rims or a trip to Miami, Florida. His contribution was seconded in that other place by the Minister of State for Legal Affairs, who urged our people to build our pockets over time. I support his words of advice, even as a banking attorney and a young Bahamian. It's in the best interest of our people, Madam Vice President, to do as much as we can without plunging into debt, to impress people that don't matter. You see, people with agendas jumped all over Minister Johnson's comments the other day and castigated him as if he had said they were to do something that had never been done. Truth is, as we all know, this is how many of our parents and grandparents built. They put down a foundation one year, laid some blocks another year, put on the roof another year, and moved in after the windows and doors were hung. And they continued to peck at it until the place we came to know as home, Grammy's house, our parents' home, had living room sets, even though we couldn't sit in those living room sets. And it boggles the minds of children to this day. Madam Vice President, I am proud to say, at 39 years old, I am a homeowner without a mortgage. At the age of 29, I broke ground, and my neighbors, and I don't mean to brag about where I live, but my neighbors in the exclusive, illustrious, and ungated community of Carmichael Road would recall that it took me 5 years to build that house. And I recall in 2009, at the age of 29, having that tractor come and cut out that foundation. And then saving up for another month or two to go and buy that bundle of steel for $2,000 some. And then saving up again and buying a case of beer and some KFC for my cousins as we tied the steel in that yard. And I see Prophetess Darius, Senator Darius here, so let me correct that. I bought several cases of beer. Let me be up front before the prophet says otherwise. But I continued to peck and save, and every other month do a little something on that property, rather than go to the bank and put myself in debt. And Minister Johnson was advising our people to do the same thing. It has been done. Our parents did it, our grandparents did it. At 29, I did it. And no bank has seen me walk into their doors for a mortgage. You know, my grandparents were Wilbert H. Moss Sr. and Vivian Joaquin Moss, Acklands and Crooked Island people. So, you know, split level structures is in the blood. And I built that home again, fellow Bahamians. I built that home again without plunging into debt or going for a mortgage. You know, my parents, Kenneth and Rebecca Henfield, also instilled in me, who live in Eastwood. And I know their former member of Parliament. You know, they built their home in Eastwood, and I remember them instilling in me sacrifice and thinking long term. And I want to commend Minister Johnson for opening up this door to say to our people, do as much as you can out of pocket. Madam Vice President, I'm always amazed when I get to sit and listen to passionate people and passionate speeches about the injustices endured by our people for decades. For decades that they expect the Minister's administration to fix in a year and 9 months. You know, Crystal Palace took years to build, but was demolished in seconds last September, Madam Vice President. You know, the problem or the crisis of housing that we have in this country isn't something that started in May of 2017. For a long time, young people like myself have wanted to own a piece of the rock, but couldn't afford to. An administration comes in that is making it possible for us to own a piece of property from $20,000 to $30,000. Never been done before. But this administration is doing that. And I would like to emphatically express and support the resolution and the bigger agenda of empowering our people. I am glad that this isn't a we was gone administration, or we had the blueprint administration, or we had the template administration. This is an administration that is delivering Senator Colby Davis. There are Bahamians of all political affiliations that need to own a piece of the rock. I really don't care whether your political leaning is PLP or FNM. We want all Bahamians to own a piece of the rock. You voted for a government to make it the people's time. It is the people's time. Reap the rewards. But I'm going to beg your indulgence, Madam Vice President, as I speak to two issues near and dear to my heart. One being the unconfirmed civil servants and the other, the hearing impaired community. Madam Vice President, permit me just to point out that there are a couple hundred civil servants going back many years who have not been confirmed. So when we as a people get excited about these service lots, there's going to be a section of or a segment of our people who cannot get a loan to even purchase the lot because they are not confirmed in their jobs. And I wish to remind all of us as parliamentarians and the government of that fact, that there are people who have been working 7, 8 years, hired since 2012, some hired prior to then, who will not be able to go into a bank and get a loan to buy the property because they don't have a job letter that says they're confirmed. And I would ask that we address that. May we get it right. May we get it right this term, this time in office. Secondly, Madam Vice President, I want to remind us as parliamentarians that the people we are legislating for, not all of them can hear us. We come in here and we bang on the table and we deliver these passionate speeches. But when they're watching, this is all they're seeing. They can't hear us. They don't know what we're doing. The deaf community does this to clap and show their support. When we deliver speeches, there's no interpreter in here, in either house. There's nothing, no closed caption scrolling by on the screen as they watch them know what's happening in this country and what opportunities they can avail themselves of. So I found myself, since coming to this place, taking a copy of my presentation, and from the day before, going into the deaf community's Facebook group and posting it for them to let them know what we are discussing tomorrow, what we are tabling. But there are persons in the deaf community prior to yesterday had no clue of the service lots because we as parliamentarians have not addressed the issue and the fact that not every Bahamian that we are passing legislation for can hear us. So I ask that we get it right, Madam Vice President. And on that note, I'm reminded of the fact that governments are continuous. There was a point in time many years back when the Center for the Deaf was promised a parcel of land to construct its school. The place where it is today doesn't belong to the Red Cross or the Center for the Deaf. It's a portion of the University of Bahamas that they allow the Center for the Deaf to operate from. At some point, the University of Bahamas is going to need their building. And the government had promised the Center for the Deaf a parcel of land for the school. I will go on record to say, if we can bring a similar resolution to what we are debating today, to provide some land for the Center for the Deaf, that I and many others will fund the construction of that place at no cost to the government. May we get it right, Madam Vice President. You know, I stand up and I speak up for the deaf community at every opportunity, not just because my brothers are deaf, both of my brothers, but because I realize that persons with disabilities have been ignored for far too long in this country by successive administrations. And I trust that it will stop now. I'm going to ask the ministers present, Madam President, to address that issue for the deaf community. And I'm going to set the stage for how. A few weeks ago, we all attended a parliamentary church service officiated by Bishop Delton Fernando. And he gave us all the story of how, when he was younger, living in Montel Heights, amongst his friends, he had the biggest hand. And back in those days, you'd go to the candy shop, and 25 cents would give you a handful of candy. So he told us how they all put together as a group of friends 25 cents back in those days to go buy this handful of candy. And when they get to the store, they pay the storekeeper, and they say, all right, go on, Delton, put your big old hand in there and get us a handful of candies. And Bishop Delton Fernandez said he stood there with his hand behind his back, them big old hands, and just kept rocking in front of the candy jar. Just kept rocking. And the store clerk got so annoyed and said, "Go ahead, put your hand there and get the candy." And he just kept rocking. He said the store clerk put his bigger hand inside that jar of candy and pulled out so much candy that Bishop Delton Fernandez had to use his two hands to receive it. So I'm going to say, Minister Folks, your hands are bigger than mine. Please reach into cabinet for us and pull something out for persons with disabilities. I don't see anywhere in this resolution and in the Affordable Homes Act where we are designating or allotting a percentage of these properties for persons with disabilities. And I think we should head in that direction. It cannot be that we're saying only persons who are hearing should have an opportunity to own a piece of the rock and have a home. Persons in the deaf community, persons who are disabled, are not making the same money those of us with all our faculties are making. They are disadvantaged. They are disadvantaged with their inability to hear or walk, and they're disadvantaged with their income. And I think we should have a percentage of these properties allocated, even if it's just 20%, for persons with disability. We can't keep leaving behind a segment of our people. So, Minister Folks, I saw your hand is bigger than mine. I beg of you to please reach into cabinet and see what you can do for persons with disabilities. Madam Vice President, I support the resolution. I'm happy for the people of Fox Hill. I'm happy for Bahamians. I have built out of pocket. I've packed. It took me 5 years to build my home, and I would like to support Minister Johnson's sentiment that we do as much as we can out of pocket. May God bless the Bahamas, and may God bless this administration. Thank you.
As many, the chair recognizes Senator Jasmine Darius.
And thank you so much, Madam Vice President, for the opportunity. I'm grateful to stand in this honorable chamber to support the resolution today. I'm also thankful for my appointment and the trust and confidence that the Prime Minister has in young people and their ability to lead and serve in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. This resolution represents an aggressive measure by the Bahamas government to support and to promote home ownership. Home ownership provides financial security and stability in families. This resolution empowers those desiring home ownership to also build stronger families. And I would like to emphasize families because that's very important to keep the families together. This government is making many persons' dream a reality by lowering the cost of purchasing the lots. This resolution demonstrates that this is still the people's time and that this government truly believes in Bahamians. I wish I could have paid $20,000 for my property on which I live with my family. But I am happy today to know that the Hubert Minnis administration is relieving the people's burden and empowering Bahamians in the Lionel Davis subdivision. Madam Vice President, if I may speak on urban renewal briefly. As we talk about home ownership, I'd also like to speak about the Small Home Roof Repair Program. And the Small Home Roof Repair Program is a revitalization program that is designed to assist the residents of Grand Bahama and Bimini in restoring and improving their homes. The minor home repairs also help to eliminate threats to health and safety. This program is critical to keeping homes dry, families together, and neighborhoods safe. Understanding that we live in a hurricane belt and Grand Bahama in particular have been hit in the last set of hurricanes to touch down in the Bahamas. On September 13th, 2018, Grand Bahama, we began our first cluster of 32 homes. The Small Home Roof Repair Manager, Mr. Alvy Penn, along with myself and our technical inspector, Mr. Eris Hutchison, we met with contractors and, of course, gave them an outline of what their scope of work was. And I am happy to report that we have successfully completed all 31 homes out of the 32 homes. We have had an incident with one home of which we are still currently addressing, but we have tabulated a 90% success rate. The value of this first cluster totals some $249,714 that was used in the Grand Bahamian community to help make residents safe, bring about a security, and to help keep families together. I must also note, Madam Vice President, the contractors who did such an awesome job in Grand Bahama in their fields of work, providing high quality work done at the industry's top standard and also in a timely fashion. I take this time to also commend, in addition to the Minister of Housing, my minister, the Honorable Frankie Campbell, because we are able to serve the persons in the Grand Bahamian community, bring relief and hope to our urban communities through the small home roof repair program. And so we can see, Madam Vice President, that this F&M administration, this government is not just promising, we are executing the people's agenda. Madam Vice President, the small home roof repair program, and I would like to also note that I heard Senator Colby Davis mention something, but in 2015, 2016, and 2017, there was no woman and no cry for the homes that would have said to have been completed, and we still cannot find them. And so I think that seeing that we are successful in completing homes, families are together, and they are safe, it speaks of this government's intention to bring about a better Bahamas, to bring about a more safer environment, and to make sure that the people's agenda is carried out. And so today, I support the bill, and I support the resolution that has been brought forward, and I commend the Prime Minister, I commend the Minister of Housing, and also the Minister of Social Services and Urban Development for doing an awesome job. Even though heavily criticized and unjustly opposed, they're doing a great job to bring about the people's agenda. God bless the Bahamas.
As many? Yeah. The chair recognizes Senator Fred Mitchell.
Great, thank you, Madam Vice President. I just wondered if the minister who's leading today is able to tell us what the status is of the 5 homes that are in Queens Park subdivision off Farrington Road, because I'm told that 4 out of those 5 houses, despite the fact that there was this ribbon-cutting ceremony last year, 4 out of 5 houses are still vacant. This leaves these houses open to vandalism. And there was this criticism of the last administration on this point. And so it seemed to me that something that the government ought to take notice of if these houses are in fact vacant. And I'm sure, because we've heard that there are thousands of people who are waiting for homes. And the question is why the homes aren't occupied.
Madam President,
the chair recognizes Minister Folks.
I do not have the information, but I can speak to the Minister of Housing and the Department of Housing to get the information as soon as possible. If that is okay, obviously that's something that we have to correct immediately, but I cannot say either way.
Senator Mitchell.
Thank you, sir. Madam Vice President, the Fox Hill constituency where this land is located was created in 1968 when Lionel Davis became the standard bearer for the Progressive Liberal Party. He was Carl Francis's general, and Carl Francis was the representative for Winton, in which the Fox Hill constituency was located before 1968. Fox Hill came out of the Winton constituency, and Carl Francis's legacy to Fox Hill is in fact Freedom Park, as the senator who spoke before me said. If you want to visit Freedom Park, which is the old burial ground in Fox Hill, there is in fact a plaque on the park where Mr. Francis Wood unveiled the plaque on the 31st of December, 1967. And of course, general elections were called again in 1968. And by that time, Lionel Davis, as we know, was chosen to be the representative. When I was the representative, and the then minister asked about this land, which I believe was originally part of a set of parcels of land publicly acquired by George Mackey, invested in the treasurer in and around 1990, which included land in Eastwood, the public areas in Eastwood, the land for the community on which the community center now sits. I thought that there was nothing that had been named after Lionel Davis, and I was pleased to suggest the name and to ask his family whether they would object to the name being appended to this lot of land. My own feeling is that I was looking at the development this morning as I went through, because I had heard that the now member of Parliament had made this observation about the trees. So I went there to have a look at it this morning, and of course all of the trees are gone, flattened. And that's usually what happens. They usually say that part of the problem with trying to keep trees is that it becomes more expensive to put the tractor in it, because the tractor driver has to take more time in isolating the trees. For a long time, this land used to, in fact, be a goat pasture. And it was my feeling, until the Ministry of Housing was going to use the land, that it should really have been converted into a community garden, with the thrust of the Ministry of Agriculture then talking about backyard farming. You would know, for example, in some neighborhoods, for example, in Brooklyn, there is a community space, and all the people who live in those areas get an opportunity to farm little plots of land and raise vegetables. And this is a way, in my view, to teach the children about agriculture, because one of the observations that a team of Harvard urban specialists said when they went through the Keys is they were surprised at how many people had lost the skill of raising chickens. And of course, when we were children, almost everyone had chickens in their yard. I just saw it in Green Turtle Key on the weekend, where I went into a yard and there were chickens running around. So that's the background from which we came, and I thought that that might have been a good use. Another use we had thought of also was the fact that the community center, given that it seats 800 people, that perhaps the spillover for parking might have been used for this land. But nevertheless, the government has decided to allocate the land to this use. I only say this: I'm concerned about the density of the occupation of the land. There are going to be 10 lots. The road is very narrow through there. There's a high density of people living in that area, and you're going to be putting more people and more pressure on the infrastructure in the area. So I just flagged that note of caution. And I would also say this, that I hope, given all the comments that were made about the cultural integrity of Fox Hill, which is something that I tried to maintain. George Mackey, who was one of my predecessors, when he asked me about running for the area, had said to me that if you get this job, your job is to make sure that the cultural integrity of Fox Hill Village is maintained. And so I think, or I hope, that the people who get the first shot at these plots of land are, in fact, people who are from Fox Hill or descendants of Fox Hill, so that point obtains. The pity is, though, that what should have been a clean debate in the House of Assembly and in this place has been polluted by something which occurred in the other place yesterday. We've issued a statement with regard to it. The matter's, in fact, been referred to the Committee on Privileges by the Speaker of the House. But looking at the press this morning, there appears to be some confusion about what actually took place. An allegation was made about the administration.
Your Honor, on a point of order, Madam President, I do not know. This is only a cautionary note to the leader officer. I do not know how far he intends to go with this, but the matter has been referred to the committee privilege of the House of Assembly. You know, we have two chambers here. We have the upper house and the lower house. And there's certain traditions, policies, and rules that governs what happens in each house and our ability to refer to the matters before each house. So I don't know. I think he's already gone too far because the matter has been referred to the Committee of Privilege. I have no doubt that committee has to meet promptly and expeditiously and report back to the Speaker. Then that report then can be debated in either chamber. But until that happens, I don't know. With respect to the representation in the papers, I have not seen, I've seen the headline, but I did not read the story. It's up to the Speaker of the House to correct that if there's any misrepresentations in the newspaper. So I just want to, both the leader opposite and I served in both places, and both of us we're very familiar with the rules. So I just want to just drop that note of caution.
I'm not seeking to reflect on any decision made by the Speaker. I only make this point. In the public domain, an allegation has been made of wrongdoing, not just against the individuals, but the administration of the Progressive Liberal Party. That's the point I'm making, and that's the point I'm responding to. What I'm saying is, whatever is in the public domain, there is no evidence whatsoever of any wrongdoing with regard to conduct by the last administration on housing. That's the point I'm seeking to make. And there's confusion about that, and our supporters and so on and so forth, so I want to make it plain. There is no allegation which can be proven, no evidence of any such conduct.
Well,
that's as far as I go.
I would just like to say that I understand your comment, but due to the fact that the matter is now been sent to the Committee of Privilege, I think the outcome of that examination by the committee will give us the final determination as to whether anything was or was not found.
That, Madam Vice President, as reflects the character and reputation of the leader of the opposition. I'm making a more general point. I'm making a more general point, not a specific point. And they can find whatever they wish to find. But you see, the issue is, and there was some joking around here, the table today, and that's fine as it goes because we're all great big people and you can take the cut and thrust of it. But there is a narrative which is continued being drummed around, which is trying to impose this story of corruption on the Progressive Liberal Party. It is a false narrative. And every time somebody by innuendo comes up with this stuff, I am bound by my position to say that it is a false narrative. That's the point I'm making. Because thus far, there is no provable evidence on that point, except that it's a nice story that has been spun. And that's fine. As I say, when we go out on the hustings, we can do that. And, you know, we can decide, and the public can decide. But given the obligations I have, I just want to be sure. You see, I tease the minister opposite about his being a good spokesman for his side, because at least when I've heard him speak, concedes what is the truth of matters. You can then say, I disagree. You know, I don't believe you did a good job. I think you did a bad job. But the truth is the truth. That's the only point I'm making with regard to this. And so I wanted to make that point, as he said earlier, pellucidly clear. Pellucidly clear. that I will always stand up against it in any time that narrative is spun. The history on housing is clear. I believe that as early as just before the 1967 election, the then administration under the United Bahamian Party started something called the Yellow Elder subdivision. And when the Progressive Liberal Party came into power in 1967, the Progressive Liberal Party government did Yellow Elder subdivision number 2. And then there were several successive ministers in the 1970s. There was Loftus Roker, Right Honorable Perry Christie. You remember the expression, houses popping out of the ground. Hubert Ingram in 1982, the Right Honorable Hubert Ingram became the Minister of Housing. Then Honorable Darrell Roll, I believe the Elizabeth Estate subdivision is connected with his name. So there's a history of doing this. And Algernon Allen, Ken Russell, Ken Dorset, and now we come to today. Housing is in high demand. And there are thousands of people who want houses. Here's the category that we are concerned about. And you've decided to go the idea of service lots. Here's the point we're making about service lots, is that there's a subdivision in Fox Hill where people had to borrow the down payment and then borrow the capital to complete the home. And what happened was, when the recession took place and the bottom fell out, they had a problem because many people lost their homes because of the double loans. So what we're saying is that what you may be begging a situation is with service lots is that you have to borrow to get the service lot, and then you have to borrow again to build a house. We're saying that, notwithstanding the criticisms of how houses turned out at the end, that some houses may have had bad construction. At the end of the day, because of the government's size and the efficiencies that come with government sponsorship and construction, allow for a unit cost which is cheaper to the individual consumer. And you give them the key and they go into the house. And it's easier for the consumer to do that. That's what we are trying to, the argument we are trying to put. I'm particularly sympathetic to this category of persons, and I don't know how large the category is, but women have come to me during my campaign in particular, and they are single. They live in rental accommodation and have been living in rental accommodation for years. They work regular jobs, either for the government or they work at Atlantis. And every month, this particular lady says, I have been paying. She said, I've been living in the same apartment for 10 years. I have been paying $850 a month for rent for 10 years. And yet, I am not in a position to buy a house. And she asked the question of me, why is it not possible for me to be able to simply move into a government house and do rent to own? I have never quite figured out what prevents this from happening or why this is difficult to do. Because in my view, my view is that everything should be possible. And maybe there's a reason why it doesn't happen. But the fact is that there's a shortage of houses. Housing is very important. It's an issue all around, and we've got to find more inventive ways to resolve it. Perhaps it has to do with something when we were trying to decide whether tuition ought to be free at the University of the Bahamas. One of the presidents of the then College of the Bahamas said to us, it's not a good idea to have free tuition because what the experience had shown the educators were that students felt there was less value to the education once something was called free. So what she said was, what you do is you set the tuition at what the tuition is, but the government provides scholarships for students to be able to go to the university. Is that what you're doing? Right, right. And they say in that case, the student has a stronger buy-in to what they're getting because they know there's a merit-based system. There's a merit-based system, and so perhaps that's what the banks I think call this a moral hazard, because what happens is if you don't have equity in something, you tend to abuse the product. So maybe they're saying that you have to build up some equity in whatever property it is, and it is only then that I give you the balance of the loan in order for you to complete the loan, because then you have some stake in the property and you make efforts to protect it. So perhaps that's the reason why this is not happening. Whatever it is, housing is important. We support the concept of Bahamians owning a piece of the rock. We think it's extremely important for it to be facilitated. We believe that while service lots may be an option, that there ought to be a turnkey solution available, which is better in our view for the population that is demanding housing. And so you've heard the support which we will give to this resolution to transfer the land from the Treasurer to the Minister of Housing. And with those few comments and observations, I'm again happy that to have been associated with this property being named after Lionel Davis, who was, and people say he was a former representative for Fox Hill. He was the first representative for Fox Hill, the first representative for Fox Hill, and he goes down in the history books as that. So I congratulate his family, and let's see that these comments will make a useful support for the public policy which comes out of this resolution today. Anything else I need to do? No. Okay. Thank you very much, Vice President. Thank you.
Ms. Minnie?
Yeah, Madam President, I wish to wrap up just very briefly to say I thank all of the senators on our side who I thought made very good contributions, and I thank the senators on the opposite side for their contribution and for their support for this resolution as indicated by the leader opposite. I also want to say to Senator Jobette Colby Davis that if only one Bahamian gets a lot or a house, that's progress. That's an empowerment of an entire Bahamian family, and a couple of children.
That's right.
And it means something if only one. And
That's right.
I say the same thing about employment and unemployment. Every one job that is given is good news for an unemployed person. This is an original plan that came about, as I said, in 2014 under the PLP administration. As a matter of fact, the land was cleared and surveyed under the PLP administration. We are happy to be in a position to bring it to fruition and to have it named after Mr. Lionel Davis, who I also knew personally and who was a kind, gentle, and as Senator Dorset said, a very nice person. I mean, if you see him socially, you won't think that he's an MP the way he moved around just as an average citizen. I'm told by my father about his brother, I cannot remember his name, I don't know if you remember Senator Davis. His brother was a more outgoing and upfront political person than he was, even though both of them were involved in politics. So the whole Davis family really made a big contribution in the Fox Hill area. Also, I don't know if you all listened to the Prime Minister on Monday night in terms of all of the accomplishments at NASA, Abercrombie, Lutra, Bimini, and just the explanation of what we're doing. I find it strange that members from the side opposite could say we're not doing anything. The whole country watched them. And the way how the Prime Minister put it together, Madam President, in one presentation to have all the projects and all the initiatives together, even as a cabinet minister who sits around the cabinet making those decisions, I was impressed. I was impressed with the presentation. I was impressed with his delivery, and I was impressed with the Prime Minister's content. I want to say to Senator Henfield that as a former minister who had responsibility for social services and also the challenged community, the disabled community, that I fully endorse on our side, and I speak on behalf of Minister Thompson and all of us, what you said. We will have to speak to both the Speaker and the President of the Senate to discuss the possibility of doing that, so that people who are deaf, that they can get a full appreciation of what goes on in both houses. We did a line item. It took a little while. It took about 2 years for us to get ZNS. It had nothing to do with ZNS, so just let me make that clear, eh? But the lady who did the signage on ZNS, I forgot her name. I don't know if she still does it, but it was in the corner on the screen of ZNS. And that was an initiative that we did with the Broadcasting Corporation in the Bahamas, where social services actually paid for that to happen. We actually paid for that to happen. And there was a line item in our budget, because for many years it was discontinued. And there was lots of complaints about it. But not only ZNS can do it, at least during the news hour, maybe we could encourage the other TV stations to also do it. So we are fully in support of what you said, Senator Henfield. Okay, with those few words, Madam President, I recommend this resolution to the Senate. And as again, I'm very pleased that the opposition is supporting it.
It has been moved and seconded that the following resolution be agreed. Whereas the Treasurer of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, a corporation sole established under Section 4.1 of the Ministry of Finance Act, Chapter 23, Statute Law of the Bahamas, is seized in fee simple entrusted for Her Majesty in right of her government of the said Commonwealth for public purposes of the herendidiments described in the schedule hereto. Now, therefore, be it resolved that pursuant to Section 53A of the Act, the Senate approves the conveyance by the Treasurer to the purchaser of the herendidiments for the nominal sum of $10 in Bahamian currency. As many as are in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The resolution is agreed. Further resolutions? Discharge of select committees. Notice for future meetings.
To renew all the notices in the name of the government, also to indicate that we are going to adjourn Signing Day.
Thank you. Orders for clerk. Adjournment.
Madam President, I move that the business of the Senate stands adjourned Signing Day.
Second, please. Seconded, please. It has been moved and seconded that the business of the Senate be adjourned sine die. As many as are in favor? Aye. Those opposed, nay. The Senate is adjourned. Sine die. Senate is adjourned.